Hey everybody, this is GGB. Today we're going to be talking about the Friday games, more specifically for this portion of the video, we are talking about Kansas traveling to number 17, Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. This is at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. Coastal Carolina is favored by 26.5 points in this game on ESPN2. So they both had relatively similar starts to the seasons. They both started out 1-0, and that win coming against an FCS team. It just depends on how they won. Kansas started out with a 17-14 win over South Dakota, right? The Coyotes, not the best college football team, not even the best, even close to the top FCS team, not great FCS team. Still was a very close game, and Kansas ended up winning it, and then the people, their fans stormed the stadium, which is the most Kansas football thing ever to do. Storm the field after a 17-14 win over South Dakota. But they got a win, that's all that matters. Jason Beam, their quarterback, went 17-26, threw for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, Coastal Carolina, on the other hand, had a dominant win over Citadel. They won 52-14. Grayson Call only threw 19 passes, but he completed 16 of them for 266 yards and a touchdown, showing why he has the possibility of being a first-round draft pick this year. They had 3 running backs have really good days. Their starting running back, Shamari Jones, had 9 rushes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their backup running back, Reese White, had 7 carries for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Braden Bennett, actually a champion in 100-meter hurdling, decided to play football this year. He's a running back. He had 6 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, obviously, 5 touchdowns on the ground, over 200 yards on the ground. It was obviously a really great day running the ball if you're Coastal Carolina. Now, their top receiver, he had a great day as well. He had 6 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown. So this game's really interesting because Coastal Carolina is 2-0 against Kansas all time, right? But both of those games were played in Kansas. This is going to be the first ever game for Coastal Carolina against a Power 5 team at home. That has never happened before. A Power 5 team has never come to Coastal Carolina. They had, they had one of their biggest crowds, last week. I expect the crowd to be bigger today, obviously, because last week you were playing the Citadel. Now you're playing Coastal Carolina. You should have a huge home crowd. Now you're playing Kansas. This is going to be Kansas's first road game of the year. Lance Leipold is one of my favorite head coaches, honestly. I love it when Group of 5 coaches transfer to Power 5, because normally I think it works out pretty well. I mean, I love Mike Norvell. I think Josh Heupel's going to do great things in Tennessee. Obviously, Scott Frost didn't work out as well as some people would have hoped, but I actually kind of like it. And let's be honest, Lance Leipold had turned Buffalo into really the MAC powerhouse. They were winning the MAC almost every year. Now, last year was different because of Ball State, but they were really the consistently great team in the MAC. They would give teams like Penn State actually a rough time. Like Buffalo, Lance Leipold can make a team. Now, I don't think he can turn around Kansas like that. Obviously, Kansas is years in the making. You have to give this guy a long time to turn around this program. But obviously, he got a win against South Dakota. That doesn't obviously happen very often for Kansas, which is why they scrum the field. The spread on this game is 26.5 points. I honestly expect Coastal Carolina to top that. They are a very solid football team. I love Coastal Carolina all around. Give me Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, to win this one and cover. At 7 o'clock, we got North Carolina A&T Aggies traveling to Duke, the Duke Blue Devils. Now, they both started out the season 0-1, so obviously not ideal for both of these teams. North Carolina A&T started 0-1 with a 29-18 loss to Furman. In that game, their quarterback Jalen Fowler went 14-29 for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Their top running back, they obviously did not have a good game on the ground, was John Maine Martin. He had 12 carries for 33 yards, no touchdowns. They had 71 rushing yards in this game. That was their fewest since 2018. So obviously, bad day on the ground against Furman. Their receiver had a pretty good day. Ron Hunt had 5 receptions for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, North Carolina A&T is not used to losing their season opener. This is the first season opener they've lost since 2012. So again, this was a kind of a shock for most Aggies fans. They were a dominant power in their conference, I believe, the MEAC. So they switched conferences, and it's going to be a little bit rough, I guess, a little bit rougher because they had a bad loss to Furman. Now Duke, on the other hand, had it kind of hurt loss to Charlotte. Now, that was Charlotte's first win against a Power 5 team. You know Charlotte fans were hyped. It was in Charlotte. So you could tell that it was a huge win for Charlotte. But unfortunately, it was a bad loss for Duke as well. I don't think you can blame their offense, though. Gunnar Holmberg, their quarterback, went 20 of 29, threw for 228 yards and a touchdown. Their running game was absolutely insane, with Mateo Durant having 29 carries for 255 yards, which is a Duke single game record, by the way, and 3 touchdowns. So obviously the ground game was clicking. Jake Bobo, their top receiver, he didn't have the best day, but he still had a pretty solid, productive day. 7 receptions for 88 yards. They've lost the season opener now 3 years in a row. Cutcliffe looked to be turning the Blue Devils around. It definitely does not look like that anymore. It has whipped on a dime for Cutcliffe. This Duke team does not look good at the present moment. But to be fair, in 2019, these two teams have played before. This is the only game they've played against, but Duke is 1-0 against them. It was in Duke, by the way, and they won 49-13. So, again, this is a North Carolina A&T team that's struggling, coming off of a loss to Furman. Obviously, you would like to hold this game close if you're North Carolina A&T. But this is Duke. I mean, this is Duke we're talking about. This is a really good football team. They really are. Actually, never mind. I normally go into like a little bit of a stupor and I say good, really good. Duke's not a good football team. At the present moment, they're bad. Their offense is really good. Gunnar Holmberg looked phenomenal. Mateo Durant obviously is awesome. Their defense needs some serious work, which if you're looking for North Carolina A&T, get that run game back on the ground. That might work in this game. But Duke is a Power 5 team, and it's just the fact is North Carolina A&T is not even going to come close to that. Like, the only times you can really bet on an FCS team to beat an FBS team is if it's, like, one of the worst Power 5 teams and one of the best FCS teams. The fact is North Carolina A&T is not one of the best FBS teams, and whether Duke has a good season or not, they are nowhere near as bad as Vanderbilt or Kansas ever is. So, I mean, Duke's not good, and I don't think they're going to be good this year, but the fact is Duke's a better team at the present moment than North Carolina A&T, and a lot better team. Anyway, give me Duke to cover and win this game. At 8 o'clock, we got North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks, traveling to the Utah State Aggies. This is actually supposed to be a closer game than I originally thought, looking at this game. The Utah State's actually only favored by 6.5 points in this game. Despite, this is on CSBS Sports Network, by the way. We're going to talk about Utah State first. The Aggies started out 1-0 this year, and it was an impressive win. I bet against them. I thought Washington State was going to beat them, but they got a 26-23 win over their Pac-12 North opponent. Now, the Pac-12 North, it was definitely cursed this week with Oregon being the only team that came out on top, and it was a very close game against Fresno State. So, obviously, it wasn't a great week for the Pac-12 North, but Utah State pulled off one of a pretty huge upset last week. So, I mean, I think you got to give them props for that. Logan Bonner went 17-24, threw for 143 yards and a touchdown and a pick. Calvin Tyler Jr. had 14 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. Devin Tompkins had 8 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. So, again, it wasn't the most productive game through the air. And not a really huge day on the ground either, but it was enough to get them a win against a pretty, like a Washington State team that is normally very good offensively. Now, how much of that was Mike Leach? I don't know. I don't know if many people can say. It probably was a good amount of Mike Leach and his style of offense, but the fact is Utah State is a good football team this year. I legitimately believe that. I think in the Mountain West you got probably Boise State, Utah State, and I think Fresno State. I think those are the 3 teams that are going to be competing. Maybe San Jose State, you can throw them in there. They did give USC game until like the fourth quarter. North Dakota, on the other hand, he started out with a pretty solid win. They had a 35-14 W last week. Tommy Schuster, their starting quarterback, went 14 of 18 for 183 yards and a touchdown. Otis Way had 22 carries for 114 yards and 3 touchdowns. Crazy day for Otis Way. And Adam Zavalny had 2 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown, and they ended up intercepting the other team 3 times last week. So they were ball hawks out there, and Logan Bonner did make a mistake in the season opener throwing that interception. But the fact is, I really like Utah State. I think they had a very good game against Washington State. They came out on top against a Power 5 opponent. North Dakota, it's just the fact is North Dakota is not a top-tier team in the FCS. You got North Dakota State, you got probably South Dakota State, you got Sam Houston State, you got James Madison's definitely a team in there. I consider UNI a top-tier FCS team. North Dakota is not that. North Dakota, I'm sorry, Fighting Hawks fans, but they're just not top tier. They're not awesome. Now, I do think Utah State it's a solid team. I really think the Aggies have a good team built together this year. That's why I'm going to put my money on the Aggies. Give me Utah State to win this game and cover. I really like Utah State this year. At 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, we got UTEP. The UTEP Miners, which started, this is an interesting game. They started out 2-0. They're traveling to Boise State, which started the season 0-1 on FS1, by the way. Normally this is a game that where you 2-0 team against an 0-1 team. You normally go with the 2-0 team. But this is a weird one because UTEP is not a team that is normally very good at all, right? This is a team that's normally at the bottom of Conference USA. But UTEP started out with a very impressive 33 win over New Mexico State, but to be fair, New Mexico State sucks, and that's why we don't know much about this team. How good are they? They destroyed New Mexico State and had a 10-point win against Bethune-Cookman. But how good is UTEP? Seriously, I honestly don't know. Now, Galvin Hardison for UTEP over the past 2 games have gone 25 of 39 through 432 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. I mean, that means he's averaging over 200 yards a game, and that's very solid, productive play by your quarterback. That's a good quarterback. You're averaging 2 touchdowns a game, so that's just solid play by your QB if you're UTEP. But you're just going against Boise State. Boise State has been the cream of the crop for Group of 5. This is what Group of 5 teams strive to be so many years, year in, year out. They are an extremely solid, productive Broncos team. They've lost many coaches. I think 3, as I can count now, to Power 5 head coaching jobs, and they still keep reloading on offense, and they're very, very good. Now, they did start 0-1, but that loss was to UCF. The UCF Knights, they ended up covering in that final spread count. But I mean, this is Boise State. The Boise State Broncos we're talking about, which is why they're favored by 26 points in this game. They had a 31-36 loss to UCF, right? Everyone remembers that. It was a very good game, but I don't know if anyone stayed up to watch it because it was delayed for 2 hours or something like that thanks to a rainstorm. But I recorded it, and I had to record a whole bunch of shows after it. I was watching the Minnesota-Ohio State game during this time, but then I ended up recording it and watching this game afterwards. Boise State took an early lead and definitely looked like they might win this game, and I might be out $50 because I did bet my uncle $50 on that game. But Hank Bachmeier ended up making a pivotal mistake down the stretch. Hank Bachmeier ended up with 25 to 39, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. That 1 pick, though, turned out to be a game crusher for Hank Bachmeier and the Broncos. Andrew Van Buren did not have the best day. The run game was not very good on the ground. They only ended up having 10 carries for 26 yards, averaged 2.6 yards per carry. Now, he did end up getting a touchdown, but I do feel like that's just, it's not a good enough day. If you're if you're Boise State and you're trying to beat UCF, you need to have a better day on the ground than that. Now, the receiver, Khalil Shakir, ended up having 5 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. He led the team in receptions and yards. Honestly, I really like Hank Bachmeier. I feel like I said that last year when I did a Boise State game. I'm going to say it this year. I think Bachmeier's a good quarterback. I think similar about him as I do Dylan Gabriel, except for obviously I think higher of Dylan Gabriel. I think Hank Bachmeier is a guy. My Power 5, if you haven't been watching Boise State, I have. My Power 5 correlation to him is if you watch Tanner Morgan play from Minnesota. Tanner Morgan's a guy that he's not going to lose you a game, and he actually might keep you in games, but he's not going to single-handedly win the game with his arm. That's just not something that is in his skill range, and it's not something that's in with Hank Bachmeier's skill range. He is a game manager, and that's fine if you have a team like Boise State, or actually, for the Golden Gophers case, Minnesota. You have a fine team if you just need a game manager. Boise State is a team that is very solid. I actually really like this year. I think they're the best team in the Mountain West. Unfortunately, they've lost their chance of making the playoffs, starting out 0-1. I expect them to end Utah's faint playoff hopes. Technically speaking, what I do for all of my college football games, and you'll notice this, is I do teams that are still playoff eligible. For me, if you lose a game and you're a group of 5 team, I think you're out of the playoff conversation. But if you stay undefeated, I think you're technically still in the playoff conversation, which is why I think why I'm predicting this game. UTEP's technically still in the playoff conversation, although I think Boise State will end it tonight. Give me Boise State to win and cover. I know this was a boring one, guys, but I do think all the favorite teams are going to win. Stick to tomorrow if you want to see some upsets. But everybody, this is GGB, Ghost Peppers saying, oh, actually, no Ghost Peppers this time. Saying adios, amigos.